Today I will talk about Loki. What's the deal with him, his potential devil fruit, and the events unfolding in Elbaf. And trust me, it will all make sense. Loki, Nika, Shanks, King Harald, Who's Who, and even Usopp, of all people, are connected in ways that go far deeper than we initially thought. In fact, long before the current events of One Piece kicked off, something had already been brewing in Elbaf. The Nika Fruit, which has a deep connection with Elbaf, had been on the island for 900 years. And that fruit was the very reason why Loki and Harald ended up clashing. An event that in turn set off everything we see in One Piece today. But before diving into Loki's role, we need to go back and examine the events that led us here. In One Piece, the concepts of the sun and moon are deeply ingrained. I won't go too deep into this right now, but I'll highlight several key points that are relevant to Elbaf. We already know about the Sun Tree, which provides light to Fishman Island and is named Eve. Then we also have the Adam Tree, a tree of legendary significance. Logically, if the Sun Tree is connected to the Sun, then the Adam Tree must be linked to the Moon. Even in the Harley text, the Sun and Moon are established as symbolic opposites. If the Sun represents hope, then the Moon represents persistence, a force that endures through hardship. Take the Kozuki clan, for example. They persisted for centuries, waiting for the dawn of the world. The Adam Tree itself represents unbreakable willpower, just like the D clan, whose influence is scattered throughout history. It's no coincidence that both the Thousand Sunny and Roger's ship, the Oro Jackson, were made from Adam Tree wood. The idea of the sun and moon being intertwined is a major theme in One Piece, and Elbaf is at the heart of it, particularly in relation to the sun god Nika and his devil fruit. The moon also holds significant meaning in Japanese language and literature, but the most relevant connections to One Piece are mystery and hidden truths, longing, enlightenment, the warrior's symbol. We could spend hours analyzing how each of these ties into One Piece lore, but the most important one for us is the mystery and hidden truths and the warrior's symbolism, because Elbaf is the land of warriors and war. However, even within Elbaf, there is an ideological divide. There are those who oppose war and those who embrace it. But where did this conflict originate? We all know that Elbaf has always been a warrior culture, but it actually started with King Harald. Remember what Shamrock said? The warriors of Elbaf roamed these seas and ever opposed the world government. The world government was never able to fully wage war against Elbaf, so Imu and the elders changed their approach. Instead of war, they sought to corrupt Elbaf from within through false promises of peace. The most obvious evidence of this corruption is connected to Mother Caramel, a woman who trafficked children and had secret dealings with CP agents and the world government. We already know that many CP agents were orphaned children raised to serve. But here's the question: how did Mother Caramel actively trade children with the world government for 50 years without King Harald noticing? Was he truly unaware? I believe he wasn't just aware, he was actively involved. And I also believe that Loki was the one who put an end to it. Let me explain. King Harald is based on the historical figure Harald Fairhair. Yes, there's irony in the fact that a bald guy is based on a historical figure called Fairhair. But beyond the name, they share several similarities. Harald Fairhair was the first king to unite Norway. His nickname Fairhair came from a vow he made, not to cut his hair until he had accomplished this feat. Likewise, King Harald in One Piece removed his horns when he united the clans of Elbaf. Harald had many sons, but two stood out the most: Hakon the Good, who later became king and was seen as one of Norway's best rulers, and Erik Bloodaxe, his favorite child, but a violent warrior who was the complete opposite of Hakon. And there it is, a father who ruled with an iron fist, one son remembered as a noble figure, and another viewed as ruthless and violent. Sounds familiar? We will come back to this, but first, let's talk about the strange events surrounding Elbaf. Although King Harald appeared to be a pacifist, he had a fully mobilized army within his castle. Why would someone who claims to seek peace need such a massive army? Then there's another important clue. The summoning circle for the Holy Knights was inside his castle. This means that the circle already existed there, or else Shamrock and Gunko wouldn't have been able to materialize inside. This suggests that Harald already had dealings with the Holy Knights, a troubling sign of his potential corruption. Now, think back to when Big Mom killed Jorul. Jarl wanted to kill her immediately, but Mother Caramel stopped him. While Harudin was screaming, what has become of the pride of Elbaf? He knew that the king had become corrupt, but he could not openly defy him. So, he swallowed his pride and let it go. Even the sword stuck in Jarl's head is significant. It belongs to King Harald himself. There's even more evidence that Harald may have been compromised. Adam tree wood is available on the black market, even though cutting the tree was prohibited. And lastly, Saint Summers mentions King Harald very familiarly, like he has already been there and had dealings with him. With all of this in mind, it's highly likely that King Harald had direct dealings with the world government. And here's the biggest revelation. I believe that he was in possession of the Nika Fruit. After Joy Boy's defeat 900 years ago, the Nika Fruit had to be somewhere. The elders said that the fruit evaded them for centuries, despite their relentless efforts to capture it. But where would it be safest from the world government? Elbaf. Remember what Shamrock said. The world government tried to conquer Elbaf multiple times, but never succeeded. This isn't just about territory. Imu and the world government want total domination. But there's another reason why they've been so desperate to control Elbaf. They wanted to get their hands on the Nika Fruit. 900 years ago, Joy Boy came dangerously close to defeating them, and his presence still haunts them to this day. So, the world government followed the classic strategy. They made King Harald an offer he couldn't refuse. Maybe they offered him the Celestial Dragon package deal, or maybe they promised that he would rule over all giants. Either way, the offer was too tempting, and King Harald accepted. This also explains why Shamrock and Gunko offered Loki the same deal. If he joined the Holy Knights, he would become a celestial dragon. They assumed that since his father accepted the deal, Loki, who resembled him the most, would do the same. But they couldn't have been more wrong. Loki is the total opposite of his father. In fact, I believe that the reason Loki went on a rampage that day was because he was against the Nika Fruit falling into the hands of the world government. He understood the deep connection between the fruit and Elbaf, and he refused to let it be taken away. But why would Loki do this? Is he really a good guy? Oda trusts his readers. He trusts you to understand the deeper meaning in the story. And, more importantly, he trusts Luffy's actions. Ask yourself, are you going to doubt Luffy's intuition? Of course not. For Luffy, nothing is worse than having freedom taken away. That's why he freed Loki. Just like he freed Zoro at the beginning of One Piece. But here's the craziest part. The character most similar to Loki isn't Zoro, it's Usopp. How can an overwhelmingly strong character like Loki be similar to a self-proclaimed weakling like Usopp? Because they are both liars. Usopp lies to become a hero. Loki is a hero who lies to become a villain. Usopp went from king, Sogeking, to god Usopp. Loki went from a prince to proclaiming himself the sun god. And here's the wildest part. all of Usopp's lies actually come true. When he lied that pirates were coming, pirates actually came. The giant goldfish actually existed when he met Dory and Broggy in Little Garden. The land of the small people was real, and saving them earned him the title of God in Uso land. He lied that he had 8,000 men, and later he actually gathered the Grand Fleet. And do you know what else he predicted? Pursuing Cerberus. And guess what? Cerberus actually appeared on Elbaf. So what if Loki, just like Usopp, is a trickster whose lies always come true? And just like Usopp, Loki is a big liar. Even starting with his name, he's literally named after a trickster god. Usopp has a famous attack called Usopp Hammer, and Loki's weapon of choice is also a hammer. Loki has a deep connection with wolves. He is even depicted as one, and his favorite pet is a wolf. One of Usopp's strongest attacks is Midoriboshi, Impact Wolf. Usopp is also accused of stealing apples. And you know who else stole apples in Norse mythology? Loki. And do you know who was the first person to trust both Usopp and Loki? Luffy. So if Luffy trusted Loki, what does that tell us about him? I believe most of the accusations against Loki aren't even his fault. Even the blame that he was an arsonist reminds me of Usopp. Usopp lied constantly, but when something real happened, no one believed him. It looks more like he wanted to reawaken that warrior spirit in Giants of Elbaf, because deep down he knew this was not time for peace. After all, Elbaf is the land of war. It's just like the famous Aesop's fable, the boy who cried wolf. No one trusted him, and that's why he ended up chained to the tree. And speaking of wolves and chains, let's talk about Loki's deep connection to Norse mythology. Loki, in Norse mythology, had a son named Fenrir, a giant wolf. Fenrir was chained by the gods with an unbreakable chain. Loki and Harald seem to parallel Fenrir's sons, Skoll and Hati, two wolves who chase the sun and moon. Now think back to Harald in Dressrosa. Why was he there? To enter the tournament and win Ace's Mera Mera no Mi. But why did he want that fruit in particular? Because he thought it was the legendary sun god Nika's fruit. Loki also calls himself the sun god, but we know that Luffy has the real Nika fruit. So that raises the question, if Loki did not eat Nika fruit, what fruit did Loki eat? I believe the Nika fruit was originally on Elbaf. The world government couldn't obtain it, and it makes perfect sense that Elbaf, Joy Boy's allies, would keep it hidden for centuries, hence the legend and deep connection associated with Nika. But here's where things get interesting. What if there was another fruit on Elbaf? Remember earlier when I mentioned that the sun and moon are always a set? If we have a sun tree, Eve, wouldn't it make sense for there to be a moon tree? And if we have a sun god, devil fruit, wouldn't it make sense for there to be a moon god, devil fruit? In Japanese mythology, Amaterasu is the sun goddess, but she has a brother, Tsukuyomi, the god of the moon. And remember earlier when I mentioned that the moon symbolizes hidden truths? That would fit perfectly with Loki, because he's a liar, and just like Usopp, his lies come true. Also, look at how Loki's appearance has changed. We can't always trust Oda's early designs, but even in the recent chapters, Loki looks completely different. How did he go from being a goofy, smiling prince to this terrifying, intimidating figure? It's a total transformation. Before eating his devil fruit, Loki didn't conceal his eyes. Now, he wears a blindfold and his eyes are glowing ominously inside. As if even under sea stone, people still don't trust him and conceal his vision. I believe his devil fruit is directly connected to what he believes and what he lies about. And for it to take effect, he has to actually look at his target. No, I'm not saying he has a Sharingan or eternal Tsukuyomi under that blindfold. But imagine this, if Loki looks at someone and tells a lie, his lie becomes reality. That is why he believes he is the sun god, because he wished himself to be the sun god. His white cloud-like aura and intimidating presence, it's exactly how an Elbafian warrior would imagine the sun god Nika to be. Just like Harudin in Dressrosa, Loki was after the Nika Fruit. That's why, when King Harald tried to negotiate with the world government, Loki went on a rampage to stop the deal. To prevent the world government from taking the fruit, he ate what he thought was the Nika Fruit, but he soon realized it was the wrong fruit. And in the chaos, the real Nika Fruit was stolen by CP agents. That is how it ended up with Who's Who. And that is precisely why Oda suddenly started focusing on Who's Who's backstory, out of nowhere. Then Shanks found out the CP agents had it, so he stole it from them. But Loki never gave up on reclaiming the Nika Fruit, since it was such an important part of Elbaf's history. He learned that Shanks had it, so he left Elbaf to hunt him down. He demanded that Shanks return the fruit, but Shanks did what Shanks does the best to the ambitious upstarts, wrecked him in battle, captured him, and brought him back to Elbaf, where he was chained to the tree. And now, through fate, the very fruit that got him chained is the one that set him free. One more reason why I believe Loki has a trickster-based devil fruit is Oda's favorite childhood cartoon, Vicky the Viking. It's an old show about Vikings, where the main character Vicky isn't strong at all, but he always outsmarts his enemies and wins through tricks and intelligence. And get this, the very first villain Vicky faces looks exactly like King Harald. And if Loki really does have a trickster-based power, will Luffy have a hard time fighting him? Because, let's be real, at this point very few characters can challenge Luffy in raw strength. But what about a foe who fights with deception? Think back to Water 7. Luffy struggled to fight Usopp because Usopp didn't fight fair. If he fights Loki, will it be the same? And don't forget, Luffy nearly lost to Foxy, another trickster opponent. Luffy is extremely gullible, like a child. That might make Loki one of the most dangerous opponents Luffy has ever faced. So what do you think? Could Loki have a legendary devil fruit connected to Nika? Something like a Hito Hito no Mi, Model Moon or Model Wolf. Could his power be directly tied to his lies? After all, on Little Garden, there was a book called Bragman. And Loki sure brags a lot, talking about all the things he would do if he weren't chained. Maybe, just maybe, his words are more powerful than anyone realizes. As always, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. It would mean the world to me and motivate me to make more videos.